Hello, everyone. Happy Earth Month. I cannot believe that it's our last Earth Month event, and it's really awesome. We're going to finish up our Keep It Green, Keep It Clean Earth Month celebration with amazing tide pools, amazing tide pools. And I'm really excited because I have my good friend Marissa here. She's our marine scientist. She's going to tell you a lot more about those amazing tide pools. Now, first, I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Port of Long Beach, Chevron, and Dive and Surf. Thank you so much for sponsoring all our Earth Month events. We could not do it without you. Now, I don't want you to forget to have a sheet of paper and a pencil because we will be doing a directed drawing of a fun tide pool animal. And what do I have here? We have a Sea Star sticker to give away. Now, how do you win the Sea Star sticker? All you have to do is throw comments in the chat. So you could throw questions in there, tell us what you like, tell us your favorite animals, and then one of you will be chosen at the end to win the Sea Star sticker. Now, I'm pretty excited because Marissa and let me pull her up here. Hi, Marissa. So Marissa and I actually went to the tide pools to prepare some footage. We had to go during low tide. So we've prepared some footage for you so that we could teach you all about the cool tide pools and the animals that we'll find. So I am going to turn it over to Marissa so she can tell you more about it.
Wow, thank you so much, Brittany. That was wonderful. Hello, everybody. Thanks again for joining us today. So yes, I'm going to teach you guys a little bit about the tide pools, how they were created, how to safely explore it, and then we'll even get to see some of the animals that we have here on site, so that'll be pretty cool. All right, first thing I want to do is ask you guys a good question, all right? What do you wear to the tide pools? When you go visit the tide pools, how do you prepare yourself to go? Any guesses? All right, maybe some hats, some sunglasses, sunscreen, right? All that cool stuff. Well, let's take a look at what you really should be wearing to the tide pools. Here's Miss Brittany. That's right, she's got a hat on her head. She's got sunscreen on. Now, when you have sunscreen, make sure you go for the Reef Safe sunscreen. If you go to the grocery store, it should say Reef Safe on it, or it should say that it doesn't have any of those harmful chemicals in it that can be bad for our local marine life. And then she's also got a water bottle. That's good because you want to make sure you are hydrated when you explore the tide pools. She's also got a camera strapped around her shoulders, and that's good in case you want to take pictures with your friends. You don't always want to have your cell phone out because if that drops in the water, not all of them are waterproof. So having an old-fashioned camera is perfectly fine, especially because it comes with that handy strap. Notice that her hands are free, right? She has nothing in her hands. That's also useful as you're exploring the tide pools because you want to make sure that you don't have anything in your hands in case you fall or you have to catch yourself. The other thing she's wearing, which is one of my favorite things, is a fanny pack, right? Or I guess a pocket pouch is what they call it nowadays. You can wear one of those around your waist. If it has a holder for your water bottle, that's even better. Because again, you want to keep your hands free. And you can store everything there, like your car keys, your cell phone, things that you would prefer to keep out of the water, but that you don't really need to have access to the whole time you're at the tide pools. And you can also see she is dressed to be in the water. She's got her bathing suit on and some shorts, right? So that means that she can explore up to her knees if she wants to and not feel like she's going to get too wet or destroy her clothes. So one thing you can do is have a spare set of clothes in your car. So later when you guys are done, you guys can change clothes and be more comfortable. But in the meantime, you'll want to wear those bathing suits to the tide pools. The other thing you want to do is make sure that your footwear is extremely comfortable and soft. And this is not only important for you, but also for the animals. Let's take a look at what that soft footwear might look like. There we go. We got water shoes. And they come in all different shapes and sizes, but notice it's very soft, very flexible, and it's got a good grip on it. So you're not going to slip on the rocks. And if you do accidentally step on a critter, you're not going to squish it that much, right? It's a lot better for the animals and for us. Very good. And now, as we are exploring the tide pools, there's so many cool things you guys can see. When you guys are in an area that it's low tide, as Brittany mentioned, you want to make sure that you go at a time where it's low tide. And that means that the water has left the area and all you have left are these little pools. That's the safest time to go visit a tide pool. You don't want to go when there's a bunch of wave action happening. So make sure you go when it's really low tide, like Brittany said. And you can do that by going to websites like NOAA, that's NOAA.org, and they're really good at having those tide charts ready for you. You can look up the day, look up the time, and see what the tide is going to be like. And anything that's below 0 is going to be a good tide, right? So that's what to keep in mind. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is make sure that when you guys are exploring, you're very careful about where you step. Let's take a look at what that looks like when you're carefully walking through the tide pools. We have a wonderful, wonderful video of Miss Brittany exploring, and she'll show us how to do it. So you can see she's very gently pulling back the eelgrass and the surf grass. She's being very slow and quiet. And you can find all sorts of neat things hiding underneath, like that sea anemone that she's pointing at right there. Sometimes they're covered in sand to camouflage themselves and to protect from the sun's harmful rays. You can also find little fish, little hermit crabs, urchins, even sea hares, which are really big sea slugs. You'll find algae and even stuff outside the water, like anemones that are covered in shells. And all that slippery algae that's on the rocks there, you got to watch out for that. So be careful as you walk. She's going to take her time. She's going to make sure she always has a hand braced on the rock for balance. She's looking at every single step she takes before she makes it, being ever so soft and quiet. And you're really going to see more animals that way. So it'll be a better experience for you and your family if you are quiet about it and not splashing around. And she's going to be very careful walking over that algae. That way, if you slip and fall, chances are you won't fall so hard. There you go. That's how you visit the tide pools very safely. It's a wonderful way to visit the tide pools, and not only are you respecting the wildlife, but you're also protecting yourselves too from any falls you might take, right? So it can be a much better experience if you do it that way. All right. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, how did those tide pools even get there? How did they form, right? Where did they come from? And the trick behind that is erosion, which can happen by wind and water that comes along the mountainsides and starts to scrape off pieces of the rocks. They come tumbling down and they end up at the bottom there. And that's where it gets rolled around by the waves and the water. And all those big pointy rocks get smoothed out into river rocks or boulders, very smooth rocks. And that's a perfect substrate for all those animals to settle on. And when those rocks form those beautiful pools, you can see the water starts to seep in when it's high tide, and the water gets trapped there when the water leaves at low tide. And that's where you see all those beautiful critters that hang out there. On these rocks, you might also see cool things like mussels, and mussels are extraordinary. They are like these tiny little bivalves with 2 shells. There they are right there. They form colonies. They form big groups. So not only are they an animal, but they're also a habitat in and of themselves. Animals like barnacles or crabs, or even gooseneck barnacles, like that one there, gooseneck barnacles. They love to live and nestle inside the mussels. And the mussels are super strong. Oh my gosh. They have these really cool threads that they use to hold themselves to the rocks and to each other. So they are very, very strong. And that's very useful, especially when the waves come and crash against the rocks like that. Other things you might find at the tide pools are sandcastle worms. And they are a lot more delicate than the mussels or the barnacles. So you're going to find them kind of on the underside of rocks. And they look just like that. They look almost like a little beehive that formed at the bottom of the rock. But they're actually a colony of worms. And they built that sandcastle all on their own. So there are phenomenal critters that are able to do that. Quite the little engineers of the ocean. So these are some pretty cool animals that you might find. And we also have some exciting animals to show you here. That'll be pretty cool. So while I get that set up, I'm going to turn it over to Brittany.
Thanks, Marissa. That was so fun. It's like walking down memory lane, looking at all the things that we saw. Now, while Marissa gets ready, because we actually have a tide pool tank at the aquarium, so we're going to show you some of the animals that we have up close. Before that, I also love how relaxing and beautiful the tide pools are. So I wanted to share with you kind of the view that we got when we were there during low tide. Like I said, it was really, really, really beautiful. And as we were walking, we actually looked to the side and we saw something underneath a rock. And I'm going to show you, and I'm going to replay this video multiple times, but this is what we saw underneath the rock. Did you see something moving? Like I said, I'll play it like 2 or 3 times. So what we found was we actually saw an octopus. Now, we couldn't get a good view of it or a good video because every time it would stick its arms out, it would hide again. It was almost like this octopus was playing a game with us. So you're not going to see an octopus in our tide pool tank because you're going to see our tide pool tank is nice and open. So the octopus would not be able to stay in there or else it would escape, just like Hank from Finding Dory, right? But I did want to show you one that we saw at the actual tide pools. Now, while Marissa is getting ready, I'm just going to double check. And it looks like she has her camera on our tide pool tank. Marissa, are you ready to show them some of the tide pool animals?
You betcha. Here we are. All right, everybody. This is our local tide pool tank that we have at the Roundhouse Aquarium Teaching Center. At this moment, though, when you guys come to visit, we're going to ask you guys not to touch the animals at this time. But I'm going to be able to show you kind of a VIP version of this. I'll be picking up some of the animals very gently and showing you guys all their cool, nifty characteristics that they have that really allows them to live inside the tide pools without suffering a lot of stress. These guys are really cool, really well adapted to their high-stress environment. Sometimes the water gets really low. Sometimes it gets really hot because of the sun. So these guys got to be able to move around fast, or if they're stuck staying put where they are, then they need to make sure that they can handle those changes in temperatures. Let's see. Oh, we have a very good question from Grace. Why are tide pools important? Why are they an important habitat? That is a really, really good question. I think for scientists and a lot of different ecologists out there, those are people that study the environment, when they look at the tide pools, it really is a really cool environment because what happens there is that's where, like I said, all the rocks and the erosion and all that stuff ends up culminating in these areas. You get all these different rocks that are there. And the animals have utilized that habitat. They've expanded. They've taken over every single inch of space in that area so that they could live there. And what's cool about the tide pools is it actually forms a buffer between the land and the huge storm systems and waves that come to shore. So these habitats, these animals, are literally protecting the shoreline from the harmful waves that could come our way or the big tidal swells that come. So on the side note, that is why they're important, but they're also important from a aspect of giving these animals a place to live, right? Otherwise, these animals would be below the waterline. We wouldn't really see them. And we'd miss out on all these extraordinary, beautiful colors and shapes and sizes that they have. Great question, Grace. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to point out one of my favorite animals to you guys. This is a purple urchin. That's right. I'm going to very gently take it off. There we go. And bring it up to you guys so you guys can see it better. Oh, it was hanging onto a piece of shell. That's cool. They do that all the time. What they'll do is they'll cover themselves in shells and debris and stuff like that and algae in order to protect themselves from the sun's harmful rays. Also, it helps them from drying out, right? These guys don't want to dry out. That's very bad for them, very uncomfortable. So they got to make sure that they are covering themselves, and that's their version of natural sunscreen, right? To cover ourselves, we often have long sleeve shirts, we have hats, we have sunglasses, or we have umbrellas, right? So we have similar behavior to these urchins to protect ourselves from the sun and the other weather elements. You might have noticed it has a lot of spikes on it too. Any guesses what these spikes are for? Why would an animal want to be spiky? How does that help? Very good. Yeah, we've got some good answers here. Okay, so they can have spikes for protection. They can also have spikes to protect them from the rocks, because if they get tumbled around in the rocks, right, these spines are going to protect them. And it's also handy for grabbing their food, because they don't have any arms, right? They don't have any hands. They have lots of sticky tube feet that they use to crawl around. But out of the water, right, you guys can't really see that very well, but they are there, kind of tucked in close to the body right now. When you put them in the water, they sort of expand, and these spines and tube feet help them grab their food, which is seaweed. That is their main food source. They especially like giant kelp, which makes up a lot of the kelp forests that we have. Speaking of eating, if I flip this guy over, you can see the mouth, which is right here. It's really cool. It's got 5 teeth. So that's 5 teeth that it has there. It's pretty exciting. And it basically just chomps on the algae like this. It pulls it in like that. And that's how it's able to eat. All right, we're going to put this little guy back gently into the tide pool. And I'm also going to show you guys a cousin that is similar to our urchin, a very similar cousin. This is what we would call a sea cucumber. Now, sea cucumbers also have rows and rows and rows of tube feet. That's what they use to crawl around. And when they're stressed out, they'll form into a big tight ball that makes them look unappetizing. And they also have what look like little warts. And that's cool because, oh, look at that. It's peeing a little bit. That's cool too. What these guys will do is they'll have this sort of like bumpy shape on them. That's why they're called warty sea cucumbers. Now, it may look like they're spiny, but they're not. They're actually pretty soft and squishy. So one of their main protections that they use against predators is actually that they'll squirt out their guts, right? If they squirt out the guts, the predator's going to go for those guts and not them, and they get away. Just like a lizard that shucks its tail off, right? The main lizard gets away, and the animal that was preying on it, like a hawk or a coyote, will just go for the tail. These cucumbers are pretty awesome. He's kind of very relaxed in my hands right now. But they do have a rear end and they have a head. And when they eat, they have these little hand-like structures that come out and spread out. And that's what they use to eat. These guys are very unusual at what they eat. What they eat is actually sand, bits and particles in the sand. So all of our clean beaches we have out there, all that clean sand, that was these guys, right? They went through, they were cleaning the sand, and they poop out nice, clean sand. So as an aquarist, this is my best friend because he will help clean my tanks for me. He's a very nice guy. All right, we're going to go gently put this guy back into his little tank here where he was. There we go. The other thing I'm going to show you is the third cousin of this particular animal. And they make up a group together called echinoderms. And echinoderms are spiny-skinned animals. Echinodermata is the phylum name. And what's really fun is it kind of reminds me of Hakuna Matata. So you guys can sing that song at home if you want to and replace it with Echinodermata. That's pretty fun. You guys can also share your favorite sea animals with us in the comments if you like. Let us know what your favorite sea animals are. Okay, here we go. This is a beautiful bat star. And bat stars come in many different colors and shapes. You guys can see the ones behind me over here. Those guys are all different colors and shapes compared to this one. But he's a beautiful orange-red color. Their texture of their skin is kind of rough like sandpaper. And that's good because it helps protect them not only from the rough rocks around them, but also predators. And let's see if I flip this guy over. There we go. He's got his little opening right here where his mouth would be. And he's got tons and tons of tube feet. Can you guys see that? They have each row, each arm has its own row of thousands of tube feet. And that's what they use to suction onto rocks and jump around and stuff. It's pretty cool. Oh, very good. Some of you guys have your favorite animals up. Some of you guys said hermit crabs. Some of you guys said nudibranchs. Very good. I love those animals. Those are so cool. Now, addition to the sea star besides their tube feet, which is one of the characteristics that connects them to the urchin and the cucumber, right? I said both of those guys had tube feet too, right? these guys are able to eat in a very particular way. Oh, and I see that question in the comments as well. Good job, Grace. That's an excellent question. They will eat by pushing their stomach outside their body, and they digest the prey within the folds of their stomach outside their body. Then they bring everything back in. It's very interesting. They're one of the few critters that actually do that, these sea stars. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put this guy back very carefully onto his little perch where he was. Very good. All right, let's move on to some other exciting animals. We also have these right here. These are reminiscent of what we saw earlier. These are mussels. So these are, again, forming a reef structure for animals to crawl on and hide in, such as hermit crabs. Here you go, Brandon. Your favorite animal. Isn't he adorable? Looks like he's trying to change shells right now. Hermit crabs, what they'll do when they grow out of their shell that they're living in currently, they'll pop themselves out and then they'll pop themselves into a new shell that's bigger and better for them. These guys don't make their own shells. They borrow shells from snails that have passed away. So these guys literally recycle. They're one of the few animals that do that. That's so cool, right? We could take a lesson from hermit crabs on Earth Day and learn to recycle things like clothes, our belongings that we don't need anymore. We could pass them on to other people that might need them, right? Or we could refurbish furniture. There's lots of stuff we could do. Even homes, right? We could refurbish homes too. Okay, oh, here's a good question from Kayla. Wants to know why there is a rope in the tank. Oh, that's a very good question. Let's put our hermit crab back. Okay, so there's a rope inside the touch tank because we actually were collecting some sea animals not too long ago, and when they brought it in, it had lots of different like mussels on it and stuff, and lots of goodies like nudibranchs. Grace, there's your favorite animal there, the nudibranchs, and they were crawling along the rope. So we were able to put it inside the touch tank, and now it's a form of our touch tank. It's part of the natural reef that we have here, right? And that's cool, is that animals will take things, just like the hermit crabs, they'll take things that get left in the ocean and they'll recycle it. They'll recycle it and turn it into a new home, a new habitat. So it's very cool. And we call those artificial reefs. Kayla, that's an excellent question. Good job, good job. Let's see. So we've talked about hermit crabs. We've talked about sea stars. We haven't talked about our sea anemones yet. Those are absolutely amazing. So here's a sea anemone right here. These are green anemones. They're really cool. They have a mouth kind of in the center of their body, and they have tentacles around the edges, kind of looking like a little bit like a sun, right? And these guys are very cool. They can also, believe it or not, they can reflect a certain light back at us. So when we have UV rays shining on it, which looks like a blue light basically, or a black light, and you shine it over the sea anemone, it's going to glow green. And we call that green fluorescent protein. It's very important for scientists right now because they're actually able to use a protein similar to that. They synthetically made it. They made it like a version of this in a lab. And they can actually track certain diseases that run through our body. So it's very, very useful. Let's see. Oh, do we have a black sea slug? We don't currently have a black sea slug right now. I wish we did. I wish we had those beautiful sea hares. But we do have, this is cool, we have a crowned urchin. So it's kind of like a little black urchin that we have. So I hope that's okay, Brandon. We can show you this guy. Crowned sea urchins are gorgeous. They're a little different than the purple urchins or the white urchins or the red urchins because they've got these extra long spikes on them. They're pretty cool. And then we're going to go ahead and put this guy back. Very good, very good. Oh, here's a good question from Teresa. How do the animals in your tank at the aquarium eat what they need? That's a very good question. So we do have to help them out a little bit because some of the stuff they'll be able to eat on their own, like these cucumbers, they're going to eat the waste that the other animals give off. So that's fine. They're set. They'll just eat up. They'll pick up after all these other animals. But the hermit crabs, the anemones, the sea stars, they're going to need extra help from the aquarists. And so the aquarists will come in every day. We put little bits of fish around so they can eat it. We put little bits of krill and mysids in the anemones for them to eat. And we also give brine shrimp to our mussels. And the hermit crabs are really good. They're scavengers, so they're going to crawl around and try to pick up little pieces of food everywhere they go. Now, to answer your other question, Teresa, like the urchins are a little bit more difficult. We actually have to give them kelp. So we're going to bring kelp in from outside and we're going to feed them. So we feed them about every other week, and it takes them about that long to get through all the kelp. We actually have an old cold fast right here from a kelp that we got earlier. And we've got hermit crabs that have decided to make that their permanent home. The animals are very resourceful. Now, one thing we haven't talked about yet are snails. So I'm going to spend the last few minutes we have here talking about one of my favorite critters, snails. And there's so many different kinds. They come in all different shapes and sizes. And these happen to be a carnivorous snail. This is a giant whelk. This is a whelk snail. They're really beautiful. He's got a nice little trap door that he can close if they need to. That's good because not only does it protect them from predators, but also from the sun, the heat, and the harmful rays of the sun. It protects them from the hot air and makes sure they don't dry out as well. So that's pretty cool. And these guys are also carnivores, so they'll go after fish and other kinds of dead things that are inside the tide pools. They're very, very important sea snails. Oh, there we go. Got another question. Do animals in the tide pool predate on one another? So predate means do they basically prey on each other and eat each other? And that can happen sometimes. Fortunately, the animals we have in this tide pool right here, none of them are going to be going after each other. In the wild, you would, In the wild, you would end up having other stars like ochre stars. Ochre stars are going to go after those mussels that we talked about here. They'll actually climb on top of the mussel and start eating them that way, right? So ochre stars would be an issue. They'll be a main predator, what we call a keystone predator in the tide pools, because they can actually determine the population of these mussels, right? They can affect what's going on in the tide pools. That's what we call keystone predators. The other ones that might eat something would be small fish that might prey on hermit crabs or some of the little critters that like to live on the ropes and stuff like that. So it depends on where you're at in the tide pools. But that's a good question. There's one more snail I wanted to show you guys. Let me see if I can get one. These are some of my absolute favorites. They are chestnut cowries. Chestnut cowries are really, really beautiful. Now these guys are kind of shiny, right? They've got that beautiful shiny shell. And underneath, this is their body right here. So they're kind of soft and squishy like a normal snail would. And this is their protective shell. Now the reason it's so shiny like this is because they can fold their bodies up and over like this, like boop, 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 boop. That acts like a windshield wiper, and it cleans off their shell every time, so nothing can grow on it. And they've got these beautiful little spot patterns on their tissue. So they're absolutely phenomenal, beautiful, beautiful critters. And I'm not sure if they smell, but that would be interesting, right? Nudibranchs can smell. Sometimes there's nudibranchs or sea slugs that smell like lemon. They smell like citrus, sometimes watermelon, people have told me. So it's really interesting. Don't forget, if you guys have questions about what I'm doing here or any of the animals I'm holding, there's his little head right there. Isn't that cute? Please, please, please post those comments and questions in the chat for us so we can answer any questions you might have. They're really cool animals, these guys. Oh, you can see it's got little antennae. That's what it uses to kind of explore its habitat, explore its environment. Helps it kind of smell and sniff around and look for food. These guys are also one of the things that like to eat the rope, the stuff that's on the rope. So like Kayla, you were talking about the rope. Why is the rope in there? It's also a good source of little nutrients and food for our animals. It gives them something to pick off on, something to eat. So I'm going to go ahead and put him on the rope. Let's see if he'll enjoy that little adventure there. Here he goes. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to pick up one of our friendly hermit crabs to help me say farewell with our beautiful tide pool tank that we have for you guys. And thanks for visiting our little tide pool tank today. I'm going to go ahead and get us set up for our drawing, and we can go ahead and do that drawing very soon.
Thank you, Marissa. That was amazing. I work here. I see the animals all the time, but every time I love learning about them and seeing them in the tanks. I just feel grateful to have them here every single time, especially our tide pool tank. That one is definitely a popular one. Now, as Marissa gets ready for our directed drawing, I just want to give you a reminder. Don't forget to send us your questions and your comments, because some of you or one of you will be the lucky winner of our Sea Star. And I'd also like to say thank you to our segment sponsor for today. So again, thank you so much for today's segment sponsor, Chevron Corporation. We salute Chevron's commitment to a zero waste and lower carbon world. Their focus on affordable, reliable, and cleaner energy is helping pave the way to a sustainable future. They work hard every day to achieve lower carbon intensity, increase renewables, and invest in lower carbon technologies. So thank you, Chevron Corporation, for your loyal support and commitment to a sustainable planet. And again, thank you so much for your support for this Earth Month. We really, really, really appreciate it. Now, like I said, Marissa is getting ready for your directed drawing. So now I'm going to show you what she is going to draw. Are you guys ready? She is going to draw a sea star, and you guys are going to draw it with you. And I wanted to show you a picture because I wanted you to see how many colors there are of the different sea stars. And earlier she showed you a bat star. This is called an ochre sea star, and that's what she's going to be drawing today. But like I said, even though they have kind of like that star shape, they come in lots of different colors, and sometimes their star shape differs. So I want you to be as creative as you want as you are drawing your ochre sea star. Now let's go check on Marissa and see if she's ready for us. Hi, Marissa. How are you doing?
Doing just fabulous here, Brittany. Thanks so much. We are all set and ready to go.
Perfect. I'm going to get my drawing ready too. And so you can take over and show us how to draw a sea star.
Perfect. All right, everybody. So, of course, you're going to need a pen and a paper. Now, what you're going to do in order to draw an ochre sea star is you want to start at the center of your paper, okay? So find where your center is. And what you're going to do is draw your very first arm, okay? So what that looks like is you'll basically start drawing almost like a little lazy river, right? And you can make it as squiggly as you want. You're going to want to make sure you also have a soft, pointed center right there. You don't want a very sharp tip, but a very soft tip. And then watch how I follow my squiggly lines back up, right? But I give lots of space. So that's one arm right there. We're going to draw another arm as well. Here we go. Here's our second arm. Feel free to get loosey-goosey with those squiggles, right? This is a very flexible animal. It doesn't have any bones. And so it's able to take any kind of shape it wants with its arms, right? Very, very important to remember that. Okay, we're going to draw our third and fourth arms. Again, I'm getting kind of squiggly with my arms here. You get a little bit of a river there. Nice. Don't forget, as you're going, you want to make sure you leave enough space so that you can have enough arms, right? Sea stars have 5 arms, so you want to make sure you leave enough space for those other 2 arms. So here, I'm going to make another one right over here. I'm going to follow my line. Perfect. Okay, and now I've got room for one more arm. Let's make it count. Very good. We're going to make it kind of squiggly, a rounded tip. And boom, all of our lines are now connected. Isn't that a cute little sea star? And the one thing you're going to want to make sure you do is draw a tiny little circle kind of off kilter at the top. That's where they actually release their eggs from. It's pretty cool, right? That's amazing. Now, the other thing you can do is start to decorate your sea star. Now, that's totally up to you. You can draw spots, you can draw dots, you can draw whatever you like. to decorate your ochre sea star, I personally like to draw little dash marks, and I start from the center and I go out like this, and I follow the shape of my arm, kind of like drawing a little line down the center of the road. And so I'm going to do that for every single arm. There they go. And that's cool because it kind of also creates the illusion that there's a little ridge, a little depth to my arms that wasn't there before, right? There we go. One more arm. Here we go. We got our little shape here, following the line of our river there. All right. Doesn't that look pretty nifty? That looks very similar, I think. Yeah, that's very nice. All right, everybody. And that is your ochre sea star. Don't forget, you guys can also add stuff to it if you want, colors, dots, whatever you like. But this is the basic drawing. It's beautiful.
Marissa, you're so good at drawing. I love every time I see your sea animals. So I am getting better. So boys and girls, I think that even if you don't think you're good at something, you keep trying until you get better. So are you ready? Ta-da! Here is my sea star. I made it a little bit more like a bat star, but I did color it. And I made mine purple since one of the sea stars that we showed earlier, this one, was purple. So I made mine purple. So thanks, Marissa, for teaching me how to draw a sea star. Now, if you guys watch the marine mammal one, I think my sea star might be a little better than my dolphin. So thanks again, Marissa. We'll bring you back up once we say goodbye. We're going to be wrapping up our amazing tide pool lesson for today. So speaking of sea stars, let's raffle off this awesome sea star. Ooh, wait, we have a question before we raffle off. Marissa, we have a question and I know you're going to want to answer it. So let me pull you up because it's about abalone.
Oh, wonderful. What a great question, Grace. Thank you. Our abalones in the tide pools. That is an amazing question. So we actually don't have any abalone in our tide pool touch tank, and that's for a very good reason. They are a protected species, a protected sea snail that lives in the tide pools in the wild. And a while back in the 1970s, their populations actually plummeted, and they were almost completely decimated. So they're very slowly recovering back to the numbers that they once were. But in the meantime, we're protecting them. We're making sure we're not having them in aquariums that aren't permitted to have them. And we're making sure that we're learning about them and studying them and that sort of thing. So if you see an abalone in the tide pools, make sure you guys don't touch, right? That's the big rule of the tide pools. Look only. We explore with our eyes, not with our hands, not with our fingers. So thank you, Grace. That's a wonderful question.
All right. So for our Sea Star winner, are you guys ready? Let me get a drum roll. I know you can't really hear it, but I'm going to drum roll too. Our winner is Brandon Takahashi. Brandon Takahashi, thank you for your participation and your questions. So we're going to throw our email into the chat. All you need to do is email us and let us know that you were the winner, and we will coordinate sending you your Sea Star sticker. So congratulations. Great job. Now, again, I want to give another thank you and another shout out to all our sponsors, the Port of Long Beach, Chevron, and Dive and Surf. Thank you again. I cannot believe this is our last Earth Month event, but World Oceans Day is coming up in June, so maybe we'll have something then. That one's going to be June 8th. And again, I'm going to bring Marissa up one more time so that we can say goodbye. Ooh, but Marissa, maybe we should tell them about some of the fun stuff that's happening at the aquarium. Let me tell them about... All right. So here were our 4 Earth Month events. So we had one on seaweed, on marine mammals. We had a virtual reading where we actually had the author of The Ocean in Your Bathtub, Seth Fishman, here at the aquarium. And we had our event today. Now, if you missed any of these, you can still register to get the link to view it. You can share with your friends, with your family. So just go to roundhouseaquarium.org/Earth Month. That would be great. And if you haven't heard, we're open. That's right. Now we're doing things a little bit differently because we want to make sure everyone is safe. So we are doing reservations. So if you would like to come to the aquarium, be sure to make a reservation at least a day in advance so that we can ensure that you get in and can see all the animals that you saw today. Now, if you have any little ones that are 4 to 7 years old or 8 to 10 years old, we are doing our in-person summer camp, And if you'd like to register or learn more about anything I brought up today, you can go to our website, roundhouseaquarium.org, and you can learn more information. So the fun does not stop just because April and Earth Month is ending. The fun is going to continue. So thank you all so much for joining us on this beautiful Saturday morning. We hope we can see you in person, and we hope you enjoyed our Tidepool event. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Happy Earth Month, everyone.
Happy Earth Month.